guys so much for being here tonight. It is so gratifying to be here in person. I was supposed to do this last year, and of course we couldn't meet live, so they gave me another chance. So I'm really happy to be here, and we so appreciate all of you, your willingness to give your time and your money to support this wonderful organization. It means so much to me and my fellow survivors. My goal here tonight is to give you some idea of what it's like to live with ovarian cancer and how I personally get through it. One person's cancer story is one person's cancer story, so I can't speak for other women, what they need, but I'm going to tell you my story because that's the one I'm qualified to tell. But I encourage you, there's other survivors here tonight, I encourage you to talk to them and hear their unique stories too. For me, this journey started almost 4 years ago. This picture was taken in February of 2018. My husband Joel and I had just celebrated our 22nd wedding anniversary. 26 as of yesterday. Yay! We had no idea how our lives were about to change. A couple weeks later, I had my routine physical with my primary care doctor. I didn't think I was having any symptoms, and I didn't have any main risk factors. I did, however, have a history of ovarian cysts, and I had learned to chalk up any pelvic pain, bloating, etc. to, well, it's just another harmless cyst. My doctor, however, knew I had this history, and she thought it was a good idea to check things out regularly. So she ordered an ultrasound. That ultrasound showed a large pelvic mass. So she sent me the very next day for a stat CT scan. Of course, the CT scan was suspicious for ovarian cancer, so she sent me directly to a gynecologic oncologist. The gynecologist told me that she wouldn't know for absolute sure if it was cancer until she could remove it surgically, and she scheduled the surgery for the very next week. I woke up from that surgery in recovery, and I was surrounded by my family. I'm gonna cry when I talk. My parents, my husband, my kids, my brother, who was fresh off his own cancer battle with colon cancer. They were all standing around, and they were all teary-eyed. So I had a pretty good idea that it wasn't great news. But Joel got the unpleasant task of breaking the bad news to me. Stage 3C, high-grade ovarian cancer. That was the start of this crazy roller coaster ride that we have been on ever since and will be on for the rest of my life. My doctor explained to me the next morning that the tumor they could see was concealing a whole bunch of other cancer throughout my pelvis and abdomen. So she removed most of it, but not all of it, and I would have to start a 18-week course of chemotherapy. About 3 weeks into that, my hair started falling out, and you could see how long it was. So I decided I gotta shave my head. So once again, Joel was called into service. He served in the Marines, so he knew his way around the clippers. And I offered to go to a salon, so he wouldn't have to do that, but he was insistent. He was like, oh no, I'm doing it. I think it was because he just wanted another bold person in the house. My mom and dad took me to almost all of my treatments. Every week was its own roller coaster ride of waiting for labs. Were they going to be good enough to even get treatment? What was my CA-125 going to be? I had some delays because the drugs are so hard on my immune system, and my white count was so low that some of my treatments I couldn't get, which made me very vulnerable to infection. I got through it though and finished my course of therapy. Here on my last day of chemo, I thought, I am going to be one of the lucky few whose cancer does not return. You can see the no-mo chemo. Yeah, that's what I thought. And the scan showed, yep, I was in remission. So I went to the doctor every month or two. I had exams, blood work, and regular CT scans. That CA-125 is a constant source of anxiety. for ovarian cancer patients. You want to know what it is, but then you don't want to know what it is. Mine stayed low for about a year, and then it started rising. I looked for every other explanation it could be, but the scans confirmed my worst fear, recurrence. This time I gathered some different opinions, but I opted to have another surgery. I had an aggressive procedure where they remove all the cancer and then soak my insides with scalding hot chemo. This is, I don't think, my actual surgery, but that is my actual surgeon. It's a risky procedure, and I woke up from it in restraints in ICU. I had lines coming out of my neck, my wrists, my arms, my back, catheter for good measure. I was on a ventilator, so I couldn't talk. So that's a huge deal for me. So the recovery was tough, but I was determined, and I was walking on the treadmill the very first day out of the hospital. Then I started another 18-week course of chemo. This one didn't make me lose my hair, but it had the same effect on my immune system, except this time we're at the very beginning of the pandemic. So that was an extra level of stress. Once again, I got into remission, and this time it was about 6 months before my CA-125 started rising. My scans confirmed yet another recurrence, and my third go-round with ovarian cancer started in the beginning of 2021 with yet another course. My parents kept driving me to treatments every week or two, still waiting on pins and needles for labs, still stressing over the CA-125, and after 6 rounds or so, the scan showed that the cancer had progressed despite a pretty intense regimen. So I started on a new set of drugs right away, and I gathered several options. I looked into clinical trials, which aren't really an option for me yet. So I will be on chemo for the rest of my life, switching drugs at every progression as long as there are options to switch to. At some point I might qualify for those clinical trials. There are a lot of drugs in development, so my hope is in that research that we are supporting here tonight. You might think all this is a heavy weight to carry, and it is. The treatments are hard on my body, and the worry is hard on my psyche. It takes a lot of energy to keep up the fight, day in and day out, but I never lose sight of why I'm doing this. So you may think, well, that's obvious. I'm doing it to survive. But not just to survive, I'm doing it to live. What is the point of extra life if you're not making the most of every day? So I make my treatments work around my life, not the other way around. In the first few weeks after my treatment started the first time, before the hair even fell out, I went on a mountain vacation where I went hiking. So that's like 3 weeks into chemo. A couple months later, we went on fall break after the hair fell out, and I went ziplining. Yes. And I've never missed a year of our decades-long family beach vacation. I've been to every performance of band and choir, my sons, even the ones who were in England and Wales, and a little side trip to Paris. Mm-hmm. Those joyful moments help drive away the sadness and fear. Thanks to those 50+ chemo treatments and counting, I've been here for a lot of those joyful moments. My daughter and son-in-law made me a grandmother for the first time. My precious grandchild is almost 3, and it's such a joy to be an active Grammy for him. I got a new sister when my brother married the love of his life, and a new nephew a couple years ago. And I drove 9 hours on the day of chemo with Joel in the back seat recuperating from knee surgery so I could be there for my niece's wedding. Oh. That wedding was in the DC area, so you can't miss an opportunity to see DC, right? Nope. So why not push my husband around the national TV? Got a little whoop from the toddler. or the Air and Space Museum, or after we put the knee patient and the baby to bed, my kids and I went on a midnight walking tour around the monument. Those memories and that family are a major source of support for me in this ordeal. I also have great friends who are always there for me. Battling this disease is just impossible without that support. It doesn't take much. Phone calls, texts, cards, and of course good times together mean so very much. As important as friends and family are, sometimes it helps just to talk to someone who's walked the same path. And that's why I'm so grateful for Oak and the great people that I've met. My first introduction to the group was at the Toast for Life Survivors Brunch. That's such a nice event where it's just a celebration of survivorship. It's not a fundraiser. Survivors don't pay to be there. So it's just a source of networking and inspiration. I take my great aunt in the navy blue dress back there, who has survived ovarian cancer for almost 50 years. It was at that meeting where I met Sherry, who leads survivors teaching students in the area. And that's where we go into medical and nursing schools and teach the students about ovarian cancer. I work with doctors in my job, so that seemed like it was right up my alley. So Sherry got me all trained up and I started presenting. Since there's no screening test, getting providers to recognize the symptoms and take action is the best hope to save some other woman from having to suffer like I have. When you get this kind of diagnosis, it's hard not to ask why. I never really asked why me, but just why anybody? Why does this have to happen? And while no one can ever answer that question, the idea that my story, my experience, might help somebody else makes it make some sense. That sense of purpose led me to look for other ways to educate others. I like public speaking, I like sales, so I look for opportunities to use those skills. While I know I can't speak for other women, maybe I can give a voice to a cause that will benefit them. And Oak gives me those opportunities. I'll give you a couple of examples. When the website SurvivorNet was looking for people for their website, they reached out to Oak, who in turn reached out to me and some other survivors. And we got to share our stories on a more national level. Also on the national level, I'm part of a delegation that lobbies Congress for critical legislation and funding. I learned about that program at the brunch as well. That's a program through our national organization, OCRA. And they train us and tell us what we're asking for. It's stressful, it's intense talking to the members of Congress, but they're very receptive, and it's very gratifying to see change that could possibly change the trajectory of this disease in the future. Closer to home, one of my favorite ways to educate and raise awareness is through the Whisper Walk. I promote it on social media and recruit as many people as I can to participate. It gives me a platform to talk to my friends about the symptoms and early detection. We had people in 3 states walking on our team, the Ovary Achievers, including a group on the beach in Florida. We eat, we talk, and we finish up with a teal mimosa toast. Yes. It's a fun way for my family and friends of all ages, here's the tallest and the smallest, to show their support. Sorry. I don't know where it went. We'll get there. Okay, well maybe we're done with pictures. That's okay, I was almost done. Obviously, spreading the word to others is very important to me, but I also spend a lot of time educating myself on the disease and its treatments. Oak helps me stay informed with seminars and with their educational expo coming up next month. I feel empowered to discuss things with my providers. They probably wish I was a little less informed, but it makes me feel like I have some skin in the game. So, I really would like to show you that.
Where's James?
Yeah, I see it on my screen, but you don't see it there. So, I've used that word fight a lot through this presentation, but it is because it's a battle, and it's mental as much as physical. So I do what I can to take care of my mental health too. I take advantage of all the programs that they offer here at Gilda's Club. I do meditation and yoga, and I feed my spirit with music and the performing arts. I love to go to arts performances, my favorite being the opera. But sometimes I just like to do nothing at all. I rest when I need to. So some days I'm just in my PJs binge watching Emily in Paris or Bridgerton. You gotta rest the brain sometimes too. A common feeling with cancer is a feeling of complete loss of control. I like to organize things and plan things. Cancer puts a kink in all those plans and tries to let you know who's boss. But all these things that Oak helps me do, educate myself, educate others, take care of myself, those things all help me to take back some of that control. I've had to learn to be more flexible, but I'm still making plans. I'm planning on it to tag along on a choir trip to Germany in May, and I've planned a 4-generation Disney trip in June. All the parts. All the So I have figured out some ways to take back control, but I've also had to learn to balance that with letting go, with surrender. There are limits to what I can control, so I have to rely on faith. Faith in my medical providers to know what's best, faith in my body to withstand the treatments, and faith in God. I've been asked by so many people, how have you endured so much and are going so strong? And I think the answer is simple. It's prayer. I have been told by so many people that they're praying for me, and I always appreciate it. People will say, I wish I could do something. All I can do is pray. And I just want to assure you that that is doing something, and it makes a world of difference. Faith helps me deal with the unknowns of cancer. I don't know if the cancer is growing right now or what the drugs are doing to my blood cells or my kidneys. I have no idea what my future holds. Of course, it can be scary to think about that. But I choose not to spend too much time there, because if I'm imagining the future, then I'm missing out on the present, the here and now. And here and now, I have my family cheering me on. I'm feeling good. I'm enjoying great food and great company. And I have all of you who have devoted your evening to helping me fight this disease. And right here, right now, that's all I can ask. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much.